Hi, welcome. My name is Mel. I teach the ceramics classes here at BreckCreate. I teach clay hand building every Friday night from 6 to 8:30. So today we're going to actually do some clay hand building projects. So for us today we're going to be doing some garden succulent wall pockets and another little tray I'll show you here in a second. I have a fake succulent stuck on this one. So we're going to be doing this nice, cute, very simple, flat wall pocket that you can hang in your home or your outside garden. There's another one too if you can see that better on the camera. It's pretty simple. We're going to do step by step. I'll explain every little thing, and you'll also be using tools that you can find around your house. So ceramics, typically you have ceramic tools, but I found a way around it. We're going to be using tools that you can find just laying around your house. So we're going to be making these pockets right here, and also some little square succulent baskets as well. So I was thinking this would be pretty cute to put a couple little tiny succulents in it. It's just a little square box. If you don't want to put succulents in it, it could just be for everyday use, tea bags or sugar or something in your kitchen or whatever, or your office desk. And here's another example that I have here with some different kind of stamps on it. All right, so these are our two projects we will be making today, and I hope you have fun. All right, so the first things I want to go over are your materials. These are going to be simple things you're going to find in your home. So first you're going to need some string, and this is just normal craft string, nice and sturdy and strong. You're going to need a stack of books. These are the same type style of books, so this is a nice and even surface. We're going to be using these books to cut our clay evenly. So a couple stacks of books. You're going to need a bowl with water. If you have a paintbrush, great, let's use that. If not, you can just use your finger. Newspaper, a rolling pin, which is hopefully somewhere in your kitchen. A screwdriver, this is optional. This is going to create little star stamps in our clay. A fork, butter knife, or a steak knife, or a cutting knife. This is so we can cut our clay. If you have an X-Acto knife, this would probably be your best tool, your best bet. This is a wooden spoon that we'll probably just use the tip for, and maybe the paddle side right here. Now and a ruler. A bowl for this piece here that we'll be making. We're going to be using this to trace. So this is our piece we'll be using for that. And then if we want to do some texture, something fun on it, we'll talk more about that. But so far I have actually some little pine needles I got from outside, and then some sticks and stuff for some cool like nature texture and stuff. I also have a doily, and I'll show you how to use that if you got some of these laying around or whatever. Okay, so those are our tools, and let's get started. All right, so hopefully you've pre-purchased your clay and it was delivered and you got it and you're at home and you got your block of clay. We were selling these 5-pound blocks of clay on our website, and they should still be up there for available for purchase. So once you get your wood block, let's go ahead and bring our books over. And a nice hard flat surface to work on, a kitchen table will be fine. I'm not too worried about it sticking. The only problem if it sticks is if you're adding water to it, but we shouldn't be adding water to it, only from clay to clay. We're not going to be putting water down clay and then sticking on the table, so avoid doing that. So I have my two books here, my 2 stacks of books, and I'm going to use this so when I cut it with my string, then I'm cutting a nice even layer. If I were to freehand this, it's probably not going to be as perfect. This is going to help us be a little bit more equal, a little bit more even. And I'm going to try and do this while sitting down so you can see me. Let's put this closer. You'd probably want to be doing this standing up. All right, so I'm going to run that string through, just like that. Now we have a nice cut off of our 5-pound chunk here, move our books. And we're looking for this kind of thickness, nothing thinner because we're gonna roll pin it out to the shape that we want so it's big enough for this circle right here. So I'm gonna get my rolling pin, and again, I'd probably be standing for rolling. It's kind of hard doing it sitting, but I'm trying to get into the frame here. So I'm gonna roll it a couple times that way, and then I'll roll it a couple times this way, more times this way actually, because I want to keep in mind the radius of this circle. I want to make sure that it's gonna fit on this piece of clay that I'm rolling out. So every now and then pick up that clay and move it, because the more you smash it to a table, the more likely it will want to stick. Also, right where you rolled, it might be a little bit of moisture, so I moved it to a different part on my table, just to prevent it from sticking. All right, looks like we're getting to that thickness. All right, that looks about good. Roll, so we're looking for a nice, even, flat piece. So something like this. Something around that thick. We don't want it too thin because we don't want it too fragile. We want it a little bit of thickness in there so that we can have some sturdiness to it. Okay, so I'm going to place my bowl over a good portion of my clay. Now I want to reuse all this other side over here. So I'm going to push this as far to the corner as I can so that I can use this for the other part of the project. I'm going to take my X-Acto knife. If you don't have an X-Acto knife, then a kitchen knife will work as well. Also, please be very careful if you're going to be using a sharp kitchen knife or an X-Acto knife or a butter knife. Just be careful of the pointy, sharp edge there. I'm going to go back to my X-Acto knife though, since I have one. And I'm going to trace around this circle, putting that knife right up to that edge and totally cutting out that circle shape. So let's pull this away, we'll set this aside, and we will use that piece later. Take off that bowl. Cool. So we should have a nice cut out piece of circle just like this. Perfect. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to roll it out just a little bit more. I'm going to go different directions. This is making my circle not so perfect, which is fine. This is a hand building project. It's made by hand, so it doesn't have to be perfect. So I widen that circle up just a little bit more so we have more of a bigger pocket. If you like that smaller circle you cut out, that's fine. That's perfectly fine. Okay, cool. I got some rough edges here, so I'm actually going to take my finger, dip it in a little bit of water, and just clean up those edges, because I don't like rough edges. And once you get it fired, those rough edges turn sharp, so it's good to smooth them out. And we only need to smooth out that top portion, because like here, this is the only top part that will be exposed. This other part of the pocket will be covered, so let's not worry too much about that bottom part. And I'll set this guy aside so you can still see what's going on, or what our end result will be. All right, cool. So with my other leftover piece of clay, I'm going to cut a half a circle because we want that half a pocket here. So it doesn't, I don't have to have a full circle. I'm going to just trace this again, remove the clay, and then again roll this out a little bit more. Again, I'm not worried that it's a perfect circle because I'm going to just cut this in half anyways. So I'm rolling it in all directions. All right, so I'm gonna see, this is gonna be, I guess I'll work upside down. So this will be my top and this will be my bottom. So I'm gonna see how best this circle fits. I actually might need to stretch it out one more time this way. There we go, much better. So that'll be my pocket portion right here. I'm actually gonna cut this in half, and I'm gonna actually just wing it and just use my thumb to trace a line where I want to cut it. I'll come in with my kitchen knife right now for a nice straight cut. Put that aside. Cool. So here is my pocket portion that will hold the succulent or letter or whichever you're gonna put in there. Okay, so I'm gonna pause here and then we'll come back and start talking about decoration because we'll wanna do our decoration now before we attach the two pieces together. So stay tuned. All right, so let's talk about decoration and decorating the surface of our clay. I'm gonna use these scraps of clay to figure out what kind of decoration I wanna do before I commit to the pieces we already cut out. And it's great because while we explore with this, because these will be setting up a little bit and hardening up a little bit so it's easier for us to work with later. So I'm gonna actually stretch these out a little bit more so I have more surface of practice clay to check out what I wanna do for decoration. So I had mentioned getting some twigs and leaves and stuff like that. I have this twig here and I'm gonna just place it on there and smash it right on top of my clay. Not too hard because we don't want it to get buried in there. So that's what that looks like if you're looking for more of a natural kind of look. I also got some of these pines, but I've noticed they're very prickly. They're kind of hard to handle with. So I got another book. I'm gonna place it on my clay and then I'm gonna smash that on top. And that one came out pretty. Let's cut that off and I can pull it up to the camera and show you. So there we go, there's that texture. So you can play around with nature, some sticks, some leaves, stuff like that. If you have some old doilies laying around, this is how this works. Place your doily over your clay, take your rolling pin, and then a light little roll over, and there you got some really cool, pretty doily texture like that. If you have old stamps from old craft boxes or stuff from school or whatever, old rubber stamps work just fine. Have fun with that. Get creative. Also, other tools in your kitchen would work. I'm going to use the end of your stirring spoon here and just do some polka dots or some texture. I'll cut that off and show you that. And you could do that all around or just in some details. And I also got a screwdriver to make these little starbursts or these little cross patterns. And if you do that a bunch, that looks pretty cool too. So get creative, kind of walk around your house and pick stuff up that you think would leave a cool impression. Obviously not anything that's very valuable because you don't want to get clay in there. But if you do get clay stuck in something, you just wash it up with water, hot water and a sponge. But that will be really fun. So explore with that, take a look around. Any old jewelry too that you don't really care about or beads, you can lightly press in and make sure it's something that can easily get pulled off. But have fun with that, play around with the texture, and then we can move on to round two. So I'm gonna decorate my pieces actually, and then we'll move on to the next round, which is attaching them. All right, so I went ahead and decorated the surfaces of my clay. So for the back piece, I went ahead and used this wooden spoon end, and I went around and did this cute little frame right here. I'm not going all the way around because again, we're gonna be putting this pocket over that bottom part. So for the bottom part, pocket part, I did some of the twigs and sticks I found and some of those pine. So something kind of nice, earthy like that came out pretty cool. It'll look really great with glaze on it once we're all said and done. Okay, so for the next step, we're going to attach our pocket to the bottom part of our back piece. So before we do that, I'm gonna take my thumb and I'm gonna just slide it around like that. I'm just widening up this surface, kind of spreading it out a little bit so that I have more of a connection surface for the bottom of this to attach to. This is where my fork comes in. Whenever we're attaching clay to clay, we need to score and slip. So this will be our scoring tool. So I'm just scratching the surface on this bottom part where we're gonna make that attachment. to make little teeth so it's got something to grab onto, connect to. I'm not too worried about doing this back piece. I think our clay is wet enough that it'll be fine to stick. So here comes that bowl of water. Let's see, move it here. And I'm going to lightly, we don't want to put a bunch of water, just one little smear there of that water. We don't want it to get too wet. Normally we would use slip, but like I said, we're not going to make slip at home. We don't have slip at home, so water will be just fine. Okay, so I'm going to place this bottom pocket part, and I'm going to move this maybe profile so you can see it a little bit better. So I'm going to place this pocket part over that. I'm going to just kind of firmly place it on. See, okay, that's where I want to have them. And I'm going to go around, and actually this is where our newspaper comes in, because we're going to apply a little bit more pressure while we're smashing this clay to clay. And I don't want your project to get stuck to your tabletop or your countertop. So I'm going to go around, make sure this edge is lining up, and I'm going to use my thumb to smash that top pocket part into our bottom back piece. So I'm going to put this around so you guys can see it. So I'm going to keep my fingers to prop up this part. All right, so something like that. Very cool. I'm liking how this is looking. I'm going to go back around just to secure those connections. We're not smashing it all the way, just a little bit to leave our thumbprint and to make sure that the clay is connecting. So this is where the newspaper comes in, because I could peel it off versus your table, you might be a little bit difficult. Cool, so we have a little pocket now. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to expand this pocket to make it a little bit more space in there, so we can put a little succulent in there. If you're happy with the amount of space you have in that pocket, then you're done. But I'm going to use this spoon to kind of push this clay out to really open up that pocket. So I'm putting hand here for support, using the back end of my spoon, and I'm just kind of doing this kind of movement. Stretching that clay, not pushing too hard, we don't want to rip it. The newspaper is helpful too, because we can just move our piece around versus picking it up. You want to avoid picking it up. Clay has memory, so if we pick it up and flop it around a bunch, it might return to that shape later on. All right, this is looking really cool. I'm really liking this. Cool. So you see how that pocket totally expanded and there's a bunch of room in there now? Great. All right. Pretty sweet. Any little mess ups or boogers or whatever, just take your finger and lightly go over it. We're not going to need any more water on this guy. He's all set. I'm going to just smooth out this rim. Cool. Now for hanging options, we can poke a hole in the center up here, or you can always Gorilla Glue a little hook on the back for easy hanging. I'm going to go ahead and just put a hole right into that middle, and I'm going to use the end of my paintbrush here. So I'm going to look for the middle. I'm kind of upside down, but I think I can figure it out. And we want it not too close to that rim part, because that'll be kind of fragile. And I'm just going to poke my paintbrush through to make that hole. Make sure I poked through. Cool. So here is my happy little wall pocket that I'll put succulents in. Now you're gonna want this to dry completely flat. I would, once it's finished and done, set it aside, maybe throw a light plastic bag over it for one day, and then the next day you can pull it off and it could slowly dry out in your home. But yeah, make sure you keep it nice and flat. Avoid picking it up like I'm doing, but I'm just doing that to show you guys. But yeah, I think that came out pretty cool. Also, one more important thing, don't forget to sign it on the back. You're gonna wanna put your name, maybe the date, or maybe just something to remind you of when you made this time of your life or something, whatever. Yeah, so there's our cool little wall pocket. All right, so now we're on to project number 2, which is this little succulent basket or little box. Again, you don't have to put succulents in it, you can put whatever you want in it. I think it would look really cute with little succulents planted in there. So let's get started. So same thing how we cut our clay on our last project. Now this time you'll notice that your clay is pretty equal to our book. So that's where we move our books. So I removed a layer, now I'm going to grab my string and do another cut. Again, I would stand up and do this, but I want to be in the frame, so I'm going to stay seated. I'm going to use my body. Oh, there goes the clay. All right. So now we have a nice cut piece, even cut piece. Put that aside. And now I'm going to roll this guy out. So for this one, our box template, it's going to be a little bit different template from just tracing our little bowl from that last project. So I have a pre-made template. You can either use a template at home with regular paper, cut this out, or you can just straight on use a ruler on top of the clay. So this is my template, and just to give you an idea, we have 11.5 inches width and then 7.5 inches tall. So while I'm rolling, and I'll leave this in the frame, I'm going to remember I need the length of 11.5. So it's going to be quite long. Remember, nice even rolls with our roller. And remember to pick it up every so couple rolls because we don't want it getting stuck to that table. So I'm going to grab my ruler. This is where a ruler comes in. And I'm at 11. So I'm going to roll just a little bit more. So I'm at that 11.5. Remember picking it up and putting it into a drier spot on your table. Okay, now I'm at 12 inches. Cool. So I'm going to roll it this way because I have my length. And I'm going to try and get it as long as I can without getting it too thin because we want this to be a nice sturdy box. So I know that this isn't 7 inches, so I'm going to have to add some clay to it. Let's just double check. Yeah, so this is actually 6.5. I'm going to pick it up and replace it. So I'm almost at the thickness that I want, but I'm going to stop before I get it too thin because I need to add clay onto either sides to make it long enough here. So I'm going to take my other piece of clay that we had earlier, and I'm going to roll out some extra clay to use to add to make that long enough. This one's a little bit trickier, but it's a really cool project. Makes you work a little bit more, but that's it's all about. It's having fun and creating. All right. Got a little stuck there. So I'm going to take my butter knife, or your other knife you've been using, and just cut that in half. Put one aside. I'm going to bring my major piece back to the middle here to work on it. And I'm going to attach these two flaps that I just made to these either side so that my template or my 11.5 by 7.5 fits on there. So we're making a large piece of clay. So what I'm going to do is use my thumb to blend, and same here. I'll just use my fingers here. Now it is important that we actually have newspaper underneath because we don't want this big piece of clay to stick to our table. So make sure you put that piece of newspaper underneath. Boom, there, did it. So that we're not sticking it to it. Because with our pressure of us smashing this clay and joining the other piece of clay, it might make it want to stick because we're putting so much more pressure. So now I'm using my palm to kind of smooth it out. Make it kind of even. Now I'm going to come back with my rolling pin. And get that nice and even. So now we have a nice big flat piece of clay for our template to fit on. Cool. So this is our goal right here. So I'm going to pause right there and have you guys get caught up, and then we'll come back. All right, so once we have our big piece of clay nice and rolled out, and we know it's going to be big enough for our template, we can go ahead and move our template onto our clay. So I would suggest go ahead and making a template at home. It's going to be a lot easier rather than pulling the ruler down and creating one of these shapes. But you're more than welcome to use the ruler if you want more of a challenge. Also, I got this template online. There's printable ones that you could probably print out. And this was a butter dish lid, actually. So if you envision it, this box, actually flipped upside down, was a butter dish lid. And I just turned it around and used it as a box. Okay, so I have my template out, and just to let you know, this is 2.5 inches, 2.5 inches here, this little box right here. So I'm gonna place this guy down. I'm gonna cut him out with my X-Acto knife. Now, this is a flimsy, nice plastic paper that I'm using, but if you're gonna be using regular paper or even newspaper you can use, I would do a trace first because it's gonna be hard to butt up against that newspaper and cut it out. So a nice little trace, and I'll just go ahead and trace all of this out for you guys since most of you are gonna probably be using newspaper or regular paper. Just a light trace, not cutting through all the way. Oops. All right, so I've traced my template here. I peeled it off, and now I can cut out my template here. So I'm gonna grab my X-Acto knife and follow those lines as best as I could. Nice steady hand. All right, so I'm gonna peel away my extra clay. And what's great about this is you can totally reuse this clay to make multiples and to work on some of your own projects or do some own experimenting. Okay, it's also important that the clay that we're not gonna be using, make sure you store it in plastic right away because this stuff dries out pretty fast. Stick it in my plastic over there. Alrighty, cool. So now I have my cute little box template. So now what we have to do is actually fold it up and then start sticking it together. But what I'm gonna do first is I'm gonna decorate it. So once you get to this step, then it's time for decoration. So gather your surface decoration stuff back, either those twigs or those leaves or whatever, or those doilies, and then let's have fun decorating it. So I'm gonna take some time to decorate my square, my box. All right, so before I start decorating, I just took my thumb and I took these little tabs here and just smushed them a little bit to create a little tab or a little flap for us to when we fold it, those be folding inside, and then our clay will go over it. And you'll see how that works in a second. So this is actually going to be the outside of our piece. So I'm going to start decorating it. So I'm going to put some of my little leaves here. Remember, use that book to smash because they are prickly. Cool. Just something like this. Cool. You can use a smaller book too. This one might be a little bit too big, but it's the first thing I grabbed. And if you get a little bit of leaf stuck in there, that's totally fine. And then I'm gonna do this branch on this outer tabs here. So this will be our very bottom of our box. We don't need to worry about decorating it. If you want to, go for it. Since it's out and you got the time, go for it. We will be putting our name on it too. All right, so I think I'm gonna stop there. I'm not gonna make it too fancy. So once it's decorated, then it's time to flip it over and then start sticking them together. All right, so once you have it decorated, then it's time to start sticking this box together, and we'll want to flip over our piece very carefully without ripping or dropping, very carefully like that. So these pieces will be folded up. I'm thinking maybe I should turn it sideways so you can get a profile view. Yeah. So I'm gonna just kind of lightly fold up those pieces, maybe take my finger and run it down like that so it stands up on its own. These pieces are gonna be folded up as well, and you'll kind of see where the creases will they need to fold. So those tabs that we made earlier right here, those are gonna be bent back a little bit, just like that. And they're gonna be those tabs that go on the inside of that box, just like that. So before we connect it though, grab my fork again. And I'm gonna scratch or score those little tabs off to the side. A little bit of water. Maybe too much water there. Just to moisten it up. Push that tab back over. So it's gonna be inside of my box. And then do a little bit of a pinching. Just like that. So there's one corner of my box. Let's try this other side. I'm gonna make a little crease here. Pick it up. Form it back in shape to its place. Have that little tab there. Use my finger to bend it back just a little bit. Score it. Take a little bit of my water. And then bring that back up and connect it. And we'll go back and finish those pieces up once we have our structure. All right, so same thing. I'm gonna bend these little tabs back. And take my fork, score those edges there, a little bit of water. And attach. All right, and same with the other side. Score that tab there, a little bit of water, and attach. Cool. So now I have my structure, and I'm going to go ahead and move my newspaper just because it was getting in the way. But we're done with smashing, so it won't be able to stick to the table. Cool. Cool, so I have my little nice box here, and I'm gonna spend some time going in there and cleaning up the edges and making it look a little bit nicer. This is totally raw, and it's totally fine just as is, like this, but I'm a little bit of a perfectionist, and I wanna go around and clean it up a little bit. So I'm gonna go ahead and spend some time doing that, and just to give you a little idea, I take my finger with some water, and I'm gonna clean up those rough edges, smooth them out, make sure there's no boogers or any extra little pieces of clay that might be distracting. You could take those little tabs on the inside and smooth them out or push them down a little bit more. I'll take my finger, put some support on the inside like that, and just rub this up. Just make sure a little more tighter connection. I like this, how you can see the seam there. I think it looks cool. I think that makes it look more handmade. So I'm gonna leave that. But if that bothers you, you can totally blend it in to where it matches with the rest of the clay. But I like that, so I'm gonna leave it. And then same with here. And then one more side. And I'm moving it around to show you, obviously, on the video, but like the other project, you don't want to move it around so much. Maybe move your body around to those areas that you need to work on. Or if you have a lazy Susan that spins around, that works perfectly, but we don't all have one of those things. Okay, cool. I'm going to just kind of frame it out. Take my finger, do another little crease down there. All right, try to pick this up and show you guys my finished little box project. Could put some little seeds in there, some little succulents, or just a little knick-knack holding box. But there you go. I hope you had fun. All right, guys, so here's our finished projects. We did a little wall pocket here and a little box here. I would drape over some plastic bags to slowly dry them out, and then after a day you can remove those plastic bags and they can air dry. Avoid from picking up or touching because you don't want to move the clay around too much. It also becomes very brittle and very delicate once it completely dries out. So when you're transporting it back to BreckCreate, just make sure to be very careful of that. So there will be finishing instructions on how to glaze and how to fire and how to pick up your pieces on our website. So make sure you read about that so you can come back and glaze and even make some more stuff. We do a lot of projects similar to this in my clay hand building class. That is every Friday from 6 to 8:30. We do a lot of different fun techniques on surfaces of clay and a lot of different shapes and whatnot. I hope you had fun. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time.